As you guys know, Season 7 is right around the corner and the dev stream just happened, so I'm not going to beat around the bush with this one with a crazy long intro or anything. We are just going to talk about the quality of life changes that are going to be happening for Season 7 of Eternal Return. Season 6, obviously, there were a lot of changes with the vision system and with VLS and the removal of battle zones. Season 7, however, is not full of drastic changes. In fact, it seems more like a quality of life update to a lot of different features, so we are going to be talking about those really fast and some of the major changes that they are making in terms of the pacing of the game. One of the things that they touched on and they spent a lot of time talking about were the things that kind of went wrong in Season 6, and it kind of boiled down to it being that they weren't able to kind of shuffle the players around. They talked about how there would be really high player density in like one corner of a map, and then the rest of the map would be kind of unfarmed, or 4 teams would kind of be hovering on like the west side, and where the east side would kind of be left untouched. And that was kind of why they introduced secret labs. At least that was what Wendy kind of hinted at, was that, hey, you know, we had secret labs in there to kind of help people disperse and kind of relocate across the map. But since the battle zones are gone, it was kind of a natural way for you to disperse the players across the map, so you could have people on some sides for the alpha objectives and some people for the battle zone objectives. Now it seems like a lot of people just hover around wherever the alphas are going to be spawning, or Omega, and kind of just pick up the boxes around there, which kind of forces this congestion in these tight little pockets around, you know, these objectives that are spawning. I have felt firmly that with the removal of battle zones and with the VLS additions, that it has kind of ruined the tempo of the game. Whereas before it felt like you always had something to look forward to that was unique and interesting because battle zones had so much variety to them. Now you have a new system that has nothing of the sort. Instead, you are trying to rush to get your team together and get kind of a farming route established within 3 zones, because that's kind of as far as the VLS can take you, so you're kind of limited as to how far you can kind of reach out and split to farm, or kind of split to go do objectives that are nearby. They also had this musical chair theory that I tried to understand, but as far as I understood, it basically was that there were not enough objectives, and it was very easy for a team to snowball if they got the objective, and teams that did not would be the ones that kind of missed out and would effectively be pushed out of the game. He also talked about how the player numbers slipped because of certain games coming out like Marvel Rivals and Monster Hunter, which was a very interesting take. So knowing that Season 6 was kind of weak and knowing that they have a lot of things that they need to fix, what are they doing to kind of change these things? So from what I took from it was that they wanted to fix the pacing and they wanted to fix the amount of objectives that were available to players. In order for them to fix the early game pacing, they're going to be changing a few things. The first thing that you're going to notice is that they're actually going to be changing the crafting times. So the crafting times for your high quality food, for your purple gear, all that kind of stuff at the beginning of the game is going to be faster so that you can pop off into the game much quicker. They even made a point to mention that if you have 2 people in one loot cluster, you should still be able to finish your gear at a pretty quick pace, so that's a pretty nice quality of life change. And one of the big things is that they are having a problem with stamina. They don't know what to do with SP. They said potentially they could be phasing it out in the long run, but right now they see it more as a hindrance than a help to the early game flow. They said they're going to make it so that SP regeneration is a little bit stronger and that it costs a little bit less when you're using some of your skills. One of the other really big changes is that the research center is now going to actually be not a restricted zone, but an open zone for you to walk through. Oh, and it's still going to be open when Wickeline spawns, so you can imagine how uncomfortable it is going to be trying to fight 3 teams in those narrow-ass corridors. It is going to suck. I'm joking, of course. The chances of you guys actually fighting in those corridors, I think, would be very slim. They are not only going to be adding a cube spawn location there, but there are also going to be some cobalt drones there for you to farm as well. And as you know, last season they added the jump pads on the 4 corners, so you will be able to get out from there if possible. Speaking of cubes, if you give a shit about cubes, I don't really know if anybody does, but they are going to be spawning in now on night 1, I believe, and they are going to be removing the CDR cubes, so the only cubes you really give a shit about now are the gold ones. There you go, that's the update with cubes. As I said before, they are trying to work on the flow of the game, or as they called it, the phase transitions, or the different phases of the game. And because of it, there's kind of a little bit of a shift on how the early, mid, and late game are going to go, but their biggest emphasis thus far has been on the early game. And one of the big changes of the early game is the termination prevention. To all my homies out there that know the pain of queuing for 25 minutes only for you to go out fast 7th, this is for you, man. That's right, you guys. You can just eternally return until day 3. You can go go through full team wipes, and the only penalty you will have is a longer respawn timer. I say that like a longer respawn timer isn't going to be that bad, but apparently it scales with the number of times you've died, I believe. He kind of said that he did that, and then he kind of backtracked saying that they didn't do that. As far as I understand, it was 8 seconds for each teammate that was dead, so at least understand that you may still want to have somebody walk away, but the mentality was that now you can be more aggressive with your team and you can just throw yourself into objectives, which if you play with randos, that is a horrifying concept. Personally, I can't wait for the 20+ seconds of awkward respawn where my teammates flame me because they have downtime and we are all staring at the gray screen of shame. Joking aside, this is a really, really great mechanic for new players. They're going to be able to kind of have a more forgiving early game experience, and they'll be able to figure out kind of what fights to take and what fights not to take, which is a perfect segue into some of the other changes that they are making to help beginner players out. One of the other big things that they are talking about is making HUD adjustments, and I know that that sounds probably a little boring, but some of the visuals that they added to it looks pretty cool, and I actually have a few clips that I stole from their videos so that I can share with you guys. And by that, I mean the one clip because they had the nimble moron moment and they were unable to play both clips, but the one clip that they have of the transition into the final zone looked really cool. So here you go.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
One of the other big changes that they are going to be adding is actually now you get to see when an objective is being taken. So on top of the screen, you will see that the tree or the meteorite is there that has spawned not only a minute before, and when somebody takes it, it will actually notify all players that they are no longer available on the map. On top of that, you will also get a countdown timer in regards to when those objectives are going to spawn, which is absolutely huge. Instead of just getting a text box on the left in the chat that you try to ignore because that's where your teammates flame you, now everything is going to be at the top of the screen and with nice pretty visuals. And while Wendy said it was a little awkward when they were doing the play testing, I don't think it's going to be that bad. I think it's going to be a wonderful change. I've always felt like the HUD was a little unclear in Eternal Return, so I'm glad that they're making these changes. I think they will be great visual guides for new players, and it's definitely something to help you understand the passing of time. Sometimes days would pass in game and I wouldn't even realize that we were already at Wiccaline. Even though, like, you don't think that would be an issue, it is absolutely an issue. So having some sort of visual to let me know, hey, by the way, I've seen that twice now, so I know that tree's gonna be spawning down in forest, that's a huge thing, man. Sometimes you're too busy doing the unka bunga to realize that you got shit going on in the background, and it will be nice to have something to help break up the monotony of just staring at my screen. They're going to be making a few visual updates to the VLS system. They're just kind of letting you know when you'll be able to see the ground again when you're in the air, so don't really care about that. While it's cool, and while that will help out for scouting, it's not a big deal to me because I don't really use it that way. One day I will be big brain like that. That day is not today. The other thing that is going to be adding as well is you'll be able to see your teammates' red timers as well, so you know when they'll boom, so you don't accidentally boom your teammate in the air. And on top of it, you'll be able to see their gadgets. You know what? Last season they added birds, this season they're adding shrooms.
Season 7, we're adding shrooms and pot, exactly.
As a new forageable food item, you can now have shrooms pop up where campfires are close by, so you can go and grab them and cook food relatively quickly, which they think will help, you know, with the food issue, especially when it comes to late game. Really, I think you should just be able to fucking buy in a campfire, and then that would probably solve the issue a lot faster. Like, just cap the campfire so you can't buy it until after day 4. But I digress. The way that they are going to solve the problem is by letting you harvest mushrooms, and they will be right next to the campfires, and on top of it, you're going to be a new plethora of food items that have to do with mushrooms as well. So if you give a shit about playing Cooking Mama in Eternal Return, this is very exciting for you. And in case you don't have enough Harvest Moon or Stardew Valley vibes in your game, guess what? They are now introducing the Hunter's Pot as well. The Hunter's Pot is a new gadget that you will actually keep after your death that can be found on boars. This is going to be our first food-oriented gadget, which they seemed very proud about, but with using the Hunter's Pot, you can place it anywhere and you can make the 100-year stew, and then actually you can put it on the campfire and you get this little interaction where the pot lid will fall off of it and you get something called the perpetual stew. I know what perpetual stew is in real life and I would never eat it, but I'm glad it will heal me for a whole bunch in game. So the next thing we're going to talk about is Lumi. And Lumi actually has some pretty big changes that are happening to them. and that is Lumi is getting an exchange function. Now, what that means is that recon drones can now be exchanged for EMP drones. You can now extract materials from items, so if you make glacial ice, you can now pull that tree back out of it if you accidentally made it. You can also remove your shards from your blood items as well. You can also have a one-to-one trade, so if you have a tree of life and you want a meteorite, you can then exchange them, as well as your flare guns. Instead of being a walking target, you can then change to the blue one. And you can also change out your mobile kiosks to mobile VLSs and stuff like that. Now, the thing that I think is really silly is that you can now exchange things for credits, and some of it makes sense. The tax skills, your loop card keys, things that you're not going to really use if you've already used them once. It makes sense for you to be able to get something out of them instead of just throwing them out of your inventory. But the really silly thing, I think, is that you can now take your gold gear that you don't need anymore and you can exchange it for money from Lumi. Now, obviously, they did not go into numbers as to how much money you will get. Just a really interesting concept. I don't know if that's going to stick. Maybe it's not going to be as important as I think it will be. It just seems like a really silly thing to do, to hold on to these items in your inventory. I never have inventory space. That shit's going on the ground. I don't know about you, but I mean, I guess if Lumi's nearby and I have a few of them on me, even though I wouldn't, I guess I could get some money out of it. Also, Lumi's not going to run away after you make an exchange either, so you can sit there and dry hump Lumi for as long as you want to and hold him hostage if that is what you desire. Another thing that they are changing is enhanced weather effects in correlation to the plants around the island. The 3 examples that they provided was that rainy days will now give more vision from the vision flower, clear days will make the healing bloom give you more healing, and then sand mushrooms during sandstorms will make the coverage larger. One of the things that they also talked about was that they are going to be phasing out secret labs when Season 8 hits. I did not cover really the Season 8 stuff because we're talking about Season 7, but they're going to be phasing out the secret labs when it comes to Season 8. So they gave us a little bit of a bump to enjoy secret labs a little bit more before they go. So one of the big things is that there's going to be a kiosk in every lab. You can leave immediately instead of kind of walking around and having to wait for that timer to go out, which is a blessing, honestly. Sometimes you just want to get in and get out. But the other thing that I don't really like is that you can enter multiple times. I wish that they had kind of clarified what that meant. They said that it was supposed to be kind of a place where you can get breathing room. I just see it as a place now that somebody can rat all game and just sit there until second place. So maybe I'm not understanding this correctly, but again, I wish they had clarified it a little bit more. It seems kind of silly, but we will wait and see how that goes. Also, when you try to leave the secret lab, now you will get an idea of a single safe zone that you can teleport to that doesn't have anybody in it, or at least you can see the numbers to that solitary safe zone. All right, so the last thing we're going to talk about before we get to the character changes is going to be the mythic selector. Now, when you get to a red box, you're going to have 4 different items for you to select from that all cover different parts. So, for example, your headpiece, your arm piece, your chest piece, your feet, that kind of stuff. You're going to be able to pick through each one. They also released a whole bunch of items specifically to help out tanks, and I think they said crit items. I'm not really sure. I didn't pay too much attention to that part, but there are going to be new blood items available. And yeah, so now you're not stuck with Taproot all game and trying to hide it in a box, or you get that opera mask that you don't need and you just say it's dog shit useless. Now you can actually pick something that might be a little bit more viable for your team rather than just having this item that is dead weight. Or I don't know, you can exchange it at Lumi and get some free shit. There you go. Okay, so the next thing we're going to be talking about is the character changes. There are a few minor character reworks. I say minor, Leon seems kind of big considering how minor the other ones are. But we are going to be talking about Alex, Leon, and Yuki. Alex's changes are kind of interesting. I do not play Alex, but I know of a few people that play Alex, and I feel like they're going to be very happy with this. He gets his own epic supply box that's similar to the mythic selector in the sense where he gets to grab a weapon. So he no longer has to memorize how to craft all these different items and walk around trying to make it happen. At levels 5, 6, and 7, he's going to get his own supply box. Again, it's like the mythic selector, so he'll have like a range of different guns to pick from and he can pick them. The other change that they made is that he doesn't need to reload when re-equipping his pistol, so no longer do you have to deal with that headache if you are an Alex player. Leon has probably the biggest changes out of all of them. Leon can now dive into concrete, I guess. He can now do whatever he wants with his E in regards to being able to use it whenever he needs to. He doesn't need to rely on a puddle anymore. It also is a channeling ability, so you can cancel it if you want to, or you can cancel him out of it. He also got a few updated visuals on his Q, so it's really nice looking, as you can see. And his water puddles will now appear at Leon's location and not his enemies per changes to his passive. I'm sure we've all seen the funny videos where Leon tries to do his ult and somebody knocks him out of it. Well, no longer can you do that. He is now a Beyblade and he will let that shit rip. You can't stop him once he starts it, but once he is actually riding on the wave, you can knock him off of it. So that is a good way to stop him from getting in on you. But that wave is coming. You cannot stop it anymore from what it looks like. The last character change is going to be Yuki, and it's just kind of like two little things. Obviously, they talked about like how his attack power is going to scale with different stuff. I don't give a shit about that. I don't play the character. I care more about like what is this man capable of. And now his E can jump over walls, and his disarm effect has now been replaced with an attack speed debuff. They said that his movement was really clunky before, and this should allow him to maneuver a lot better. The other thing that they added, and they said it was for the funnies, I don't think it's very funny, but apparently now you can totem during his ultimate, and I have to admit it does look pretty cool in the visual effect. But I hate that ult, so I don't want to get hit by it, and the fact that he can just stand there and do it now kind of for free feels really bad. It's bad enough that Hisui can do it, but to be fair, I think that Yuki is not nearly as oppressive as Hisui can be, so I'm mildly okay with it. And there was obviously more stuff that went into the patch notes, and I would say if you are interested, there is a almost 5-hour video that you can watch. Somebody very kindly has put the timestamps down at the bottom in the comments. Go check it out. There is changes that are coming to Cobalt. They talk about the new characters, the new skins, all that kind of stuff. I just don't think that's relevant if you just want a quick breakdown of what's actually going to be expected in terms of new gameplay. So yeah, that's just kind of what I decided to cover.
Caw if thankful. Caw. Thank you, guys.
So hopefully that was a good enough breakdown for you, so at least you can walk into the next season kind of knowing what to expect in terms of when you are actually on Lumia Island. If you want the rest of the information, like I said, I will leave a link down in the description box below, linking to the dev stream so that you can check out all the additional information if that interests you. If you like this video, please consider giving it a thumbs up. Every little bit helps with the algorithm, of course. If you want to leave a comment telling me how excited you are or how upset you are about some of the changes coming in Season 7, I would love to hear it. Hopefully all the information there was concise enough for you guys, and I hopefully got it all correct. Sometimes Wendy can ramble a little bit, and I mean that with all the love in my heart. So sometimes I get a little confused as to what he's trying to say, but hopefully it was all relatively correct. And if I am not correct about something, please let me know and I will edit it in the description box, or I'll put something up in a comment, something like that. And yeah, that's it. Bye.